Okay, so Canada has a new prime minister, you guys, and in his first act, Carney has scrapped the carbon tax. Technically, he didn't. He can't actually do that without parliament. What Carney has done is to reduce the carbon tax down to zero. I hear a lot of conservatives saying it is a trick and they'll probably bring the carbon tax back and put it up higher with no rebates, or maybe they'll pass it on to the industries in form of higher taxes, and those companies will then turn around and proceed to flee to the United States, where Donald Trump is promising them lower taxes and no tariffs. Who knows, right? But this is getting very interesting now. I said this would happen even before Justin Trudeau announced he would resign. I said they would cut the carbon tax, the Liberals. Here's a clip from my January 1st New Year prediction. Watch. The carbon tax will be gone before the end of the year. I know, don't tempt me with a good time. Justin Trudeau has demonstrated that he's not above taking the opposition's policy in order to try and sway the public sentiment. You know, at the time, I thought the carbon tax would be the Liberals' final gambit to get voters on side. It is an easy way to continue to tear away at the core of Pierre Poilievre's support. Now, the Conservatives face a bit of an identity crisis. This was their cornerstone policy. From the Liberal perspective, it makes sense strategically. From the perspective of a working Canadian, I don't give a flying duck who cuts the carbon tax. I'm just going to say that. I just want to see groceries get more affordable. That's all I care about. But you know what? I want to talk about Carney's cabinet a little bit, right? It's interesting that Prime Minister Carney has chosen to keep Stephen Guilbeault in cabinet. This is a guy that the Conservatives have basically labeled a tree-hogging charlatan in the last few months. Now, there are a few ways this could work, right? Minister Guilbeault is obviously a very polarizing figure. He drives votes either way. He can give you votes and he can lose you votes. But he is a key Quebec lieutenant. The other strategic importance he has is that he helps the Liberals maintain that base of people that still want to see climate action, right? But also, on the other members of the cabinet, there's obviously a lot of familiar faces in there. A lot of those ministers worked with Justin Trudeau. It was interesting to see that he brought back Chrystia Freeland. He brought her back as Transport and Internal Trade Minister. I must say, that one had me raising my eyebrows a little bit. Here's another eyebrows moment for you, okay? Apparently, he's bringing back Gerald Butts as Chief of Staff. You'll recall Gerald Butts was Trudeau's principal secretary and senior political advisor. He resigned because he got all mixed up with the whole SNC-Lavalin affair. And speaking of SNC-Lavalin, I still can't get over the fact that in Trudeau's last act, or one of his last acts, he awarded a high-speed rail contract to this same controversial company. Most people don't realize Atkins Realis under the Cadence Consortium is SNC-Lavalin. It feels like a big cover-up, and no one is talking about it in the media for some reason. Anyways, he has also kept Dominique Leblanc, François-Philippe Champagne, and Mélanie Joly. I think those are really good choices. They've been front and center of the negotiations with the Trump administration in the last few weeks. And I think they've done good work under the circumstances. I don't know too much about the new faces he's brought in. He's only brought in 3 new faces. I'll have to learn a lot more about them in the next few weeks. He's brought in Nova Scotia MP Cody Blois, Toronto MP Ali Essasi, and the new House leader will be Ariel Kayabaga. She's an MP representing London West. I love that she's black, by the way. You got to represent. I hope she turns out to be absolutely phenomenal, you know? But moving on from that, I think a lot of people were expecting a lot more new faces. Pierre Poilievre in his press conference after actually mentioned exactly that. But actually, speaking of Pierre, I thought it was very classy of him to wish Justin Trudeau a happy retirement at his press conference. I don't know if a lot of people noticed that, but I certainly did. I thought it was very classy of him to say that.
Today, I'd like to begin by congratulating, I should begin by wishing Mr. Trudeau a happy retirement and all the best to his family, and congratulating Mr. Trudeau's economic advisor, Mark Carney, on becoming Prime Minister only 3 months after he moved his headquarters out of Canada to New York.
He actually said that in the first few minutes of his speech after Carney was sworn in. I really respect that. I respect that. But obviously after that, he launched into talking about Carney and all the familiar faces in his cabinet. In my opinion, I think under the circumstances, considering we're probably going to get an election maybe before March 24th, that's another thing I predicted, by the way. I predicted we would get an election call before March 24th, before all the hipsters started saying it, you know? All I'm saying is that we could be in election season in short order. And also, we're in the middle of a trade war with the United States. So considering these factors, I think it was a good strategic decision for Carney to keep some of these faces around, right? Imagine if he had picked a whole bunch of outsiders who don't have a seat in parliament. Suddenly, it's not only the prime minister who doesn't have a seat, which is wild in itself, but imagine if there were more unelected cabinet members. It just would be silly at that point, right? It is interesting that his cabinet is smaller than Justin Trudeau's cabinet. It's a cabinet of 24 ministers. He's got 13 men and 11 women. Look, I agree with the smaller cabinet. I know Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, was complaining about how certain crucial portfolios were not represented. Jagmeet pointed out that there isn't a minister of labor anymore, especially at a time when workers could be struggling with these tariff wars, right? Instead, Carney has chosen to have a minister of jobs and families. That's Steve McKinnon's position right now, okay? Inevitably, as Carney was taking questions about being sworn in, the Trump question came up. The journalist wanted to know if he would meet with Trump soon, maybe rush off to Mar-a-Lago and bend the knee, kiss the ring, you know what I mean? like do what Justin Trudeau did, you know? I love how Carney responds here. He says he's going to go to Europe first to meet with the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron of France. They'll talk about trade, they'll talk about security. I love this from Carney. Talking to Trump is not the first thing. He has emphasized the need for some respect to return to the relationship with the White House. And you know what? About damn time, guys. About damn time. Look, I agree with a lot of the first steps that Carney has taken as Prime Minister. Strategically, they make sense, considering the cards he has right now. If he calls an election soon and proves me right, even better, even better. Here's where it gets a little dicey. Here's what Carney said when he was asked about declaring his assets. If you've been paying attention, you'll know that Pierre Poilievre has been attacking him on this for a little while now. Watch how he responds here.
Hi, Prime Minister Carney. I'm Jillian Piper with Global News. I understand that your assets have been put into a blind trust. I wanted to ask you, what is the value of the assets and where did they come from? How can Canadians know that there's no conflict of interest if they don't know where the assets come from?
That's an odd question, or odd way of framing it. The assets are in a blind trust. So, and can I point out that for those who don't follow this, I have 6 months to put, or 120 days to put the assets in a blind trust. I already have put the assets in a blind trust. And once assets are in a blind trust, you don't know that, by definition, you don't know the assets because the trustees take over the responsibility. I would like to reassure you that the assets that I have were earned through employment. Employment income, employment as a public servant, and employment in the private sector. And I would note as well that employment in the private sector is something that the Leader of the Opposition has never experienced. And I would point as well that complying or meeting standards expected of a leader of a party, let alone a Prime Minister, is something that the Leader of Opposition has not respected either, and I'm speaking directly with respect to his refusal, still at a time of great crisis, to get his security clearance, something I managed to do in 2 weeks.
Okay, so see if this caught your attention too. Carney said he put his assets in a blind trust before becoming Prime Minister. Okay. I know the term blind trust just sounds fishy as hell, but what is a blind trust? Okay, let's talk about that first. So according to the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner, any assets whose value could be directly or indirectly affected by government decisions or policy, for example, stocks, those assets will need to be sold. Last thing you want is a Nancy Pelosi situation over here, right? Nancy Pelosi used to be the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. Lots of controversy about how she used her position to enrich herself, allegedly. Anyways, the alternative to selling those assets is to put them in a blind trust. The idea with a blind trust is that you can put someone else in charge, a trustee, for the period of your public service, for whatever amount of time Carney would be prime minister. So you give them legal authority to manage the assets for you. The key point here is that they have to manage your assets without any input or insider knowledge from you. So it's not illegal. Corrupt politicians do abuse this all the time though, right? In Nancy Pelosi's case, apparently her husband has been cashing in, allegedly, okay? I'm not making any accusations here. So maybe Carney puts his wife as his trustee, okay? I know there are some people out there that have a tracker on Nancy Pelosi's transactions. Apparently you can make a lot of money that way. I'm not giving you guys financial advice, okay? I'm just trying to find a way like all of you guys, right? I'm just trying to find a way like you. Pierre Poilievre has accused Carney of putting himself in a position to hide and hold millions of dollars in interest that go against Canada and Canadians. I'm quoting that, yeah? That's one way to put it. Pierre Poilievre, as a member of parliament, is required to disclose his assets every year. So you can see why he's pissed, right? If I have to do it, why don't you have to do it? But as I said, Carney is acting within the rules, whatever you may think of the rules. In terms of precedents, Stephen Harper's government actually enacted the Conflict of Interest Act in 2006. The Conflict of Interest Act requires public office holders to divest, so to sell, like I told you earlier. They have to sell controlled assets or place them in a blind trust within 120 days of assuming office. But I will say this though. Despite enacting the Conflict of Interest Act, I did not find any record of Stephen Harper himself using a blind trust or declaring his assets for that matter. If anyone finds any evidence of that, you can let me know, but I did not find it. In fact, what I did find was this article from 2013 talking about how his wife, Lauren, sold her entire portfolio for no reason at all. She didn't give a reason. So I don't know. Whatever you might say about Justin Trudeau, he did disclose his personal finances and later moved them to a blind trust. It is interesting that at the time he disclosed that he had inherited $1.2 million from his dad, former Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau. It is interesting that all these years later, something like 12 years to the time he declared his assets, he is now worth $96 million. That's a number you see floating out there, right? By my calculation, that suggests he had an average annual return of 40% a year, roughly. I know the Prime Minister makes $400K these days. Maybe I'm just guessing here. I'm just putting a few numbers out there. Maybe he saves $200K every year. Lots of math, okay? But what this shows me is that apparently Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's trustee is an amazing investor. Like, I want to hire that guy if he can help me out. You need to find that person and copy everything they're investing in. I don't know. This is the marvel of compound interest, you guys. This is why they tell you to start investing early. Don't worry, that last part wasn't sarcasm. Investing will change your life, but I don't know. The gains there seem a little big. I don't know. Anyways, last thing I gotta say is happy retirement, Justin Trudeau. Thank you for your service. I know we don't always agree on everything, but maybe the history books will look kindly on Justin Trudeau's legacy. Maybe we'll look back in 5 years and we'll think some of the things he's done are great policy. Who knows, right? Who knows? Maybe we'll look back 5 years from now if Donald Trump hasn't nuked the world just yet. Who knows, right? But if you're new to the channel, please nuke the subscribe button or tap it gently. But just join the conversation anyways, okay? Tell me what you think in the comment section. I'll see you next time. Take care, guys.